Naively and innocently, Tuin had begun to relate the story of his ancestors. He had mentioned it in an unassuming manner, as though he had been speaking to a child. But what seemed to him to be merely an old story had an entirely different meaning to me. It sounded as though a spaceship had crashed near where his village now stood. It had been traveling across the void to some unknown destination when it was disabled. Apparently, the occupants were then unable to leave the Earth, and Tuin and the villagers were their descendants. An incredible story, yet because of the way it was presented to me, it had the indelible ring of truth. I wanted to know more about this legend, since I believe that most legends have some basis, no matter how remote, in fact. I was now faced with two mysteries that I wanted to track down and somehow verify. First, I wanted to find out everything I could about the old ones. Secondly, I wanted to try to discover where and possibly when the crash had occurred. I would indeed have to probe like a detective if I were to put these things together and find my answers. But I love a mystery and a challenge, and I had just been handed a wonderful one. I had not yet been given enough clues. The locale of Tuin's village was sketchy and could apply to many places on the earth. He lived in an isolated spot in a river valley surrounded by mountains topped with perpetual snow. This suggested a northern climate, but on which continent? The clothing and housing did not sound like Native Americans. I thought the time period could not be very remote since they were not primitive. They knew the art of weaving, since some of their clothes were made of cloth. They used metallurgy, which is a complicated process. People who are isolated and who believe they are the only one in the world would have no sense of time, such as years, that we could relate to and identify. Through questioning, I would have to find out what type of culture they had and when it could have existed. In order to find these answers, it would eventually require a lot of research. But that has never bothered me. I love to delve in libraries for that elusive bit of information once I have a story that is worth pursuing. Tuin had mentioned a drink made by the farmers that was mainly consumed during celebrations. One way to identify a culture is through its belief structure. So when Beth and I met the following week to continue with this story, I intended to explore this line of questioning. The key word worked beautifully, and she immediately entered a deep, somnambulistic trance state, and I began. What kind of celebrations would you have?
We have several ceremonies. There are main ones and there are smaller ones. And these ceremonies, they keep the times of the year in the proper places and help the years to pass, one year to the other, in the flowing cycle of life, the harvest, the spring, and in the winter, midwinter festival when the sun starts coming back.
I asked for a description of the celebrations.
For the harvest, we move the kettles from where we usually cook and build a large bonfire. And we start out dancing to help get relaxed. You try not to worry about your child that is sick or about the bugs eating your grain or what have you. You dance, you relax. And then the wise man, he starts singing the special songs, the ones that call down the spirits.
I asked if they used any type of musical instruments at these festivals. He said they had a few, but they were used for private use and group entertainment at the inn. He said,
We like fun. When what must be done is done, why keep working when you do not have to?
He described a small handheld drum that was covered with a delicate piece of skin. It was not struck. It was brushed with the fingertips to make soft sounds. There was a set of sticks that were shaken or rubbed to make a clacking noise. Tuin mentioned a carpenter in the village who was experimenting with different wooden shapes and gut and trying to produce a stringed instrument